Welcome to Charts Today. My name's David Linton, and today's edition for Wednesday, the 12th of June, comes to you from London. And the dollar index still just sinking a little bit lower. We see markets are actually just generally in the red. Having had a good run over the last several days. So dollar still bearish on that short-term chart. If we look at the euro, that's maintaining its strength on that weaker dollar. We still have three downside targets hanging over us, and we haven't quite made it into medium-term bullish yet. Against the yen, the dollar was actually turning on the chart, but we're just giving that up now, and we're back to just turning into medium-term bearish. The yen being a safe haven when we see a little bit of turmoil, and that's what's happening at the moment. Sterling actually looking a little bit stronger against that weaker dollar on the short-term chart. We've got a new upside target of 130.33. That's 2.3% higher, but at the same time, the medium and long-term chart's still bearish. Against the euro, sterling still struggling on all three time frames really, and against the Swiss franc we're sitting at 126, and that's really roughly where we've been for a while now. Looking at Bitcoin, we're sitting at $7,980. Just can't quite get back above that $8,000 level. We were there in the night momentarily, but we're just back below there. The S&P 500 index was flat yesterday, barely changed, and the Nasdaq 100 also barely changed. Interestingly, we're hanging on to the gains that we've seen over the last week, so no dramatic sell-off there at the moment. The Dow also similarly just holding on to the gains, and the Russell 2000 has been the weaker index, still holding on to its gains, not quite as clear as the Nasdaq. A little bit worrying on the Russell that we are just starting to hang around in this bearish territory. And on the long-term chart and on the medium-term daily chart, we're just starting to look a bit risky there as well. So one thing to worry about, and that's the breadth of the market. Looking at the S&P future, we're down 0.15%, and the Nasdaq E-mini down 0.3%. So it does suggest we will open lower in the US today. The UK market is down 0.4% this morning, not really changing the nature of the chart, and the 250 actually down by less, down 0.25%. The DAX down just over 1/3%, and the CAC 40 down 0.4%. So we're seeing a little bit more sell-off there. Japan was down 0.5% overnight. The big faller was Hong Kong. No great surprises there with the political turmoil we're seeing unfolding there at the moment. So the Hang Seng was down just under 2%. The Chinese market down 0.5%, and the Sensex down 2/3%. So across the board, we really saw markets falling. The Aussie market, little change, down just a smidgen, so not a great deal of change there. Brent crude, the sentiment weighing heavily there, down 2% this morning, back into bearish territory on all three time frames. We don't have a clear downside targets for Brent, but if we look at WTI, we do have this downside target of 52.10, and we're currently sitting at that level. So the target was given and met. That is bearish action, but we're short of the next target. But again, we're bearish on all three time frames, so that is having an impact. US nat gas sitting at $2.39, still in the doldrums. And if we look at gold, gold rising on this weaker sentiment. So interestingly, we're seeing a push now off this recent low. Will that give us another upside target? Almost certainly yes. And we do have this 1434 to play for. If we break to that, gold really starts to look very bullish. And we see on the weekly here, we had this uncertainty where the lagging line was, and we're now breaking. So gold looking quite strong indeed. Silver also up 1%, so that's looking better. And US 10-year yields sitting at 2.14%. Still not much change there. Looking at the individual stocks now, and here I'm using Yahoo Finance. Here we see the indices overnight, and we can see a lot of red. This data coming from Yahoo, as I said. This is the Dow. So the best performer in the Dow was Caterpillar, up 1.2%. Cisco up 1.2% as well. So there's still some pretty good performances here, and we're seeing that in terms of the relative on the Dow Jones Index. Looking at the Nasdaq, the best performers were Beidou Group, up 3.2%, although that doesn't really change the chart. Still looking pretty bearish, and on the downside we had workaday down 3.7%. This chart has been looking really good lately and is still outperforming the Nasdaq by 15% this year, so quite key there. Taking a look at the Aussie market, it performed relatively well. We had Emeco Holdings up 14%, so that's looking a little bit better, but the chart not that great. Ausdrill, which we've seen in the leaderboard quite a bit, is sitting at 6.5%. Again, not enough to really change the picture there. And if we look at the downside, we've got Infigen Energy down 5%. That chart not looking great at all, underperforming the Dow. China was a mixed picture, and if we look at the Nifty 50 in Asia, we had Tata Steel up 2.3%, but we see on the whole most stocks were falling. And if we look at that, we had India Bulls Housing, these two featuring quite a lot here. India Bulls Housing coming back to test support, and Yes Bank also testing support. So we are seeing a bit of a sell-off there. Looking at Europe now, in the UK market, we've got Fresnel up 1.9%, Tesco up 1.7%. So we are seeing some quite good performances there this morning. But we look on the downside, we've got Bats, they're down 3.4%, having had a stronger showing yesterday. Moving to the 250, we had some really big falls yesterday. Just Group, we see here, actually up 3%. Ted Baker had a terrible day yesterday on their profits warning. You saw the shares dive. They've recovered just 1.8% this morning, but we saw some 30% fall off there. That's made them underperform the market by 45% this year on the Dow Jones. So really hit quite hard there. Amigo Holdings down 4% this morning. Premier Oil down 4% as well. So we are still seeing some pretty big falls. Superdry down 3.5%. So fashion retailers really not having a good time of it. Looking into Europe now, the best performer is Vivendi. They're up 0.7% this morning, looking pretty good still on the chart. If we look at the downside, we've got CRH in Ireland, they're down 2.3%. The chart just holding up though, and then Adidas down just 2%, and that chart also holding up. So we're seeing the worst performers being the best performers. Quite interesting there today. And here we see the live pricing coming in from Yahoo. That's it for today. Until tomorrow, happy charting. See you then.